The coastal cover-up. Clara Bennett had always loved the sound of the waves crashing against the rocky shores of Cape Cod. At 69 years old, she found solace in the rhythmic ebb and flow of the Atlantic Ocean, a constant companion since her husband, Edward, had passed away 5 years earlier. Their beachfront home in Provincetown was more than just a house. It was a sanctuary filled with memories of sunsets watched from the wraparound porch, laughter echoing through the halls during family gatherings, and quiet evenings where Edward would read aloud from his favorite mystery novels. But lately, the serenity had been shattered by whispers of doubt and a growing sense of unease. It started with a peculiar incident at the local library, a place Clara frequented to borrow books that reminded her of Edward's passion for literature. One afternoon, as she checked out a worn copy of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, she noticed a small envelope tucked between the pages. Her name was scrawled on the front in familiar handwriting, that of Tom Riley, Edward's best friend and a retired fisherman who lived down the road. Intrigued and a bit wary, Clara slipped the envelope into her purse and waited until she was home to open it. The note inside was cryptic, written in code that only she and Edward had used during their early courtship days. A simple substitution cipher based on nautical terms. Deciphering it took her back to happier times, but the message chilled her to the bone. "They're coming for the house. Check the safe. Trust no one in the family." Clara's heart pounded. Tom had always been dramatic, but this felt different. Edward had mentioned a hidden safe in his study, one she'd never opened, assuming it held old documents or mementos. Why now? And who were they? Clara's stepchildren, Mark and Lisa, had never been close to her. Edward's first marriage had ended in divorce long before he met Clara, and the twins, now in their 40s, had always viewed her as an interloper. They visited sporadically, more out of obligation than affection, and their conversations often circled back to the value of the property. "Dad would want us to have a piece of this," Mark had said once, eyeing the ocean view with undisguised greed. Lisa, ever the pragmatist, would nod and add, "Real estate prices are skyrocketing here. It's an investment." Clara had brushed it off as casual talk, but Tom's note made her reconsider. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Clara knelt in Edward's study. The safe was concealed behind a false panel in the bookshelf, just as he'd described in his will. With trembling hands, she entered the combination, their wedding date, and the door clicked open. Inside were stacks of papers, bank statements, property deeds, and a folder labeled Family Matters. Flipping through it, Clara's breath caught. There were records of loans Edward had given to Mark and Lisa over the years. Tens of thousands of dollars for Mark's failed business ventures and Lisa's extravagant lifestyle. But more alarming were recent documents. Forged signatures on loan applications using Clara's name, withdrawals from joint accounts she hadn't authorized, and emails between Mark and Lisa discussing ways to handle the old lady. The pieces fell into place. Her stepchildren weren't just distant, they were plotting. The beachfront property, valued at over $2 million in the booming Cape Cod market, was their target. Edward had left everything to Clara in his will, but Mark and Lisa had contested it quietly, claiming undue influence. They'd lost, but apparently they hadn't given up. Tom's note mentioned committing her. Did they plan to have her declared incompetent? Clara's mind raced. She was sharp as ever, teaching part-time at the local community center and managing her finances meticulously. But isolation had made her vulnerable. Her biological family was scattered across the country, and friends had drifted away after Edward's death. The next morning, Clara decided to act. She couldn't confront Mark and Lisa directly, not yet. Instead, she reached out to Tom, meeting him at a quiet cafe in town. The grizzled old fisherman looked older than his 72 years, his face weathered by decades at sea. "Edward made me promise to watch over you," Tom said, sipping his coffee. "I overheard Mark talking to a lawyer at the marina. They're gathering evidence of your mental decline, doctor's notes, witness statements. They want to petition for guardianship and force you into a facility, then sell the house and split the proceeds." Clara felt a surge of anger. Why? Edward provided for them in trusts. It's not like they're destitute. Greed. Tom replied simply. Mark's in debt from bad investments, and Lisa's husband left her high and dry. They see your home as their bailout. And Clara, there's more. Edward left you something they don't know about. Evidence in that safe, proving they've been forging documents for years. Back home, Clara delved deeper into the folder. There were photocopies of checks with her forged signature, credit card statements for purchases she never made, luxury vacations to the Caribbean, high-end jewelry, even a down payment on a condo in Boston. Mark and Lisa had been siphoning money subtly, using Edward's old connections to cover their tracks. The total? Over $150,000. It was fraud, plain and simple. But to fight back, Clara needed help. She wasn't tech-savvy, but she knew someone who was. Mia Gonzalez, a young journalist at the local Cape Cod Times. Mia had interviewed Clara for a story on retirement living, and they'd bonded over shared interests in literature. Clara called Mia that afternoon. "I need your expertise," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's a story of family betrayal, forgery, and a fight for justice. But it has to stay quiet until we're ready." Mia arrived at the beach house that evening, her notebook in hand and a determined glint in her eye. At 28, she was ambitious, with a knack for investigative reporting. As Clara laid out the evidence, the note, the safe's contents, the forgeries, Mia's eyes widened. "This is explosive, Mrs. Bennett. If we can verify it, it could be front-page news. But we need more proof. Have you confronted them?" "Not yet," Clara admitted. "I want to let them dig their own grave." Together they devised a plan. Mia would pose as a potential buyer interested in Cape Cod properties, reaching out to Mark under a pseudonym. Meanwhile, Clara would monitor her accounts and record any suspicious activity. Tom agreed to keep an ear out in town, where gossip flowed like the tides. Days turned into weeks. Mark and Lisa visited more frequently, their concern feigned, but their questions probing. "How are you feeling, Clara? Memory okay?" Lisa asked one afternoon, her smile too bright. Mark nodded along, glancing at the property with calculating eyes. Clara played along, pretending to be forgetful, misplacing keys, repeating stories to lure them in. Behind the scenes, Mia's ruse paid off. Posing as Elena Ramirez, a wealthy investor from New York, she emailed Mark about beachfront listings. He bit, sending details about Clara's home, claiming it would soon be on the market due to family circumstances. He even attached a preliminary appraisal and hinted at a quick sale to avoid complications with the current occupant. "Jackpot," Mia said, showing Clara the emails. "He's admitting intent to sell without your consent." But the real breakthrough came when Clara checked her mailbox and found a letter from a psychiatrist's office in Boston. It was an appointment confirmation for a mental health evaluation, one she hadn't scheduled. The signature? Forged again. Clara photographed it and sent it to Mia, who traced it back to a doctor with a history of questionable practices, often hired for guardianship cases. Emboldened, Clara decided to record a conversation. She invited Mark and Lisa for dinner, setting up a hidden voice recorder in the dining room. Over lobster rolls and clam chowder, a Cape Cod staple, the talk turned to her well-being. "You seem tired, Clara," Mark said, his tone solicitous. "Maybe it's time to consider assisted living. We found a nice place in Hyannis, ocean views, activities for seniors," Lisa chimed in. "It's for your own good. And honestly, this house is too much for one person. We could sell it and use the money to cover your care." Clara feigned confusion. "Sell? But Edward left it to me." Mark exchanged a glance with Lisa. "Well, if you're not competent to manage it, we've talked to lawyers. A guardianship would let us handle things." The recorder captured it all. Their admissions, the subtle threats, the greed laced in every word. With the evidence mounting, Mia pitched the story to her editor. "It's not just about one family, it's elder abuse, a growing issue on the Cape." The editor greenlit it, but they needed one more piece: confirmation from the forger. Mia's research revealed that Mark had used a shady contact in Boston for the signatures, a man named Victor Hale, with a rap sheet for document fraud. Posing as a client, Mia met Victor in a dingy cafe. "I need some papers fixed," she said vaguely. Victor, sensing easy money, boasted about past jobs, including helping some siblings with an old lady's loans. Mia recorded the conversation, sealing the deal. The article hit the stands 2 weeks later. Coastal cover-up. Stepchildren accused of forgery and elder abuse in bid for million-dollar property. It detailed the forgeries, the emails, the psychiatrist appointment, and quoted anonymous sources, Tom and others. The Cape Cod community erupted. Neighbors who had suspected something reached out to Clara with support. The local police launched an investigation, and the district attorney filed charges for fraud, forgery, and attempted elder exploitation. Mark and Lisa denied everything at first, hiring a slick lawyer from Boston. But when confronted with the recordings and Mia's evidence, their defense crumbled. In a tearful confrontation at the courthouse, Lisa broke down. "We were desperate, Clara. Debts piled up. We thought you'd never know." Mark added, "Dad would have wanted us to have it." Clara stood tall, her voice unwavering. "Edward wanted me safe and happy. You betrayed that. This isn't about money. It's about trust." The trial was swift. Mark and Lisa pleaded guilty to reduced charges, facing probation, restitution of the stolen funds, and a no-contact order. The house remained Clara's, and she used part of the settlement to establish a fund for elder abuse victims on the Cape. In the aftermath, Clara found new purpose. She volunteered at the library, sharing her story to empower others. Mia became a close friend, and together they wrote a book about the ordeal. Tom, ever the guardian, checked in weekly. As Clara sat on her porch one evening, watching the waves, she reflected on the journey. The coastal cover-up had unveiled not just betrayal, but her own strength. At 69, life wasn't ending. It was beginning anew, with the ocean as her witness.